What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Greg Hickman of AltAgency. And Greg, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. We have a mutual friend, Ian Garlic. That was a really cool episode. He runs videocasestory.com and helps people collect amazing case stories. And it was interesting, Greg. I don't know if you know this about him, but one part of the story was his dad was an entrepreneur, and he told the story of his dad having live dolphins in a restaurant. Did you know that? And the funny thing is, you know, he's in Orlando. That's strange, but for Orlando, it's not that strange, I guess. But that restaurant was in Wisconsin, and they had live dolphins. Okay, so there was just a really cool, just gave me some creative juices flowing with that conversation. People could check that out. I had a conversation with Todd Taskey. I don't know if you know Todd, Greg. He's got the Second Bite podcast. So he pairs private equity with agencies, and he helps sell agencies. And so his podcast is called The Second Bite because he finds sometimes people sell more on the second bite than they do on the first, because when they sell the private equity, the private equity sells again. So again, just a valuation of the agency space and just agency space in general. So there's a lot of, that was a really good episode as well. And then Todd, actually, Kevin Hurrigan from Spinion Tech was another one. He's had an agency since 1995. And so he talks about the landscape of the internet, business, and agency life since 1995. Okay, so those are all good ones. Check them out. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Greg, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for people to, you know, basically create great content and great relationships, and they can spend the time running their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. And so if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. So I'm excited to introduce Greg Hickman. Greg and I have known each other for a while and known his work for a while. Actually, we were his customer when he had his other agency. And so Greg Hickman is the founder of AltAgency. You can check him out at altagency.com. He's trained and consulted over 700 agency owners, freelancers, and service providers on how to productize their services and monetize their expertise. And Greg, kind of some of the things I want to dig deeper on is some of the things they do and help people do. Create or make over your existing service menu into your productized service suite. They help create and build this, you know, systematic sales experience, so you only sell to the right people while optimizing your time, and structure and deploy a new client onboarding experience and client fulfillment process that sets the clients up for success, and identifying and building the right team of people and processes to free your time as the owner, scale your team and your systems, deliver an operating and communication cadence for meeting your goals. So those are the things we're going to kind of break down. We could spend like 3 hours on that stuff, but I'm going to have you talk about some of the mistakes people make with these things. But let's just start off. First of all, welcome, and just start off with talking about AltAgency and what you do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me again, Jeremy. Appreciate it. So, I mean, you kind of said it. We're a training and consulting company focused primarily on digital agency owners, creative agency owners. Some self-identify as consultants or, you know, service providers, depending upon how big they are, how big their team is. But all of the clients that we work with, they, you know, started off as practitioner, master of the craft, and then they grow to a size where the building those skills no longer is helpful in them growing the business. They need to learn business skills. They need to learn how to market themselves. They need to learn how to, run a team. They need to install systems that, create smooth operations. And that's what we help them build out and install into their business.
If anyone goes to his website, altagency.com, you can tell that Greg has lived this because there's pain in each of these bullets, Greg. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They're pain from your experience in each of these bullets. Like, am I spread too thin and trying to do everything myself? My revenue feels unpredictable. So if you're an agency owner, you could tell Greg has been in the trenches for many, many years, because each of these bullets you've lived these things, and you're like, okay, I can help people. Right. And so I love that. And your journey, I want to talk about some of the lessons along the way before we kind of get to those details. But I mean, you've kind of been on all facets of this, meaning like you were at a big agency, then you were with a client, hiring agencies, then you had your own agency. So maybe hit just a bullet on each of these and maybe a learning. Like right off the gate, you worked with a big agency.
Yep. So I started off at an agency called Tracy Locke, which is part of Omnicom, one of the largest agency, portfolios in the world. And I learned how a whole agency actually works, and specifically a full service agency. And I think, the lesson that actually I didn't really understand until years and years later, as we started training and coaching other agencies, is that what was like, I actually understand what full service means now, like, because you hear a lot of agencies like, oh, like, well, we're stuck because we're full service. Tracy Locke had maybe 20 clients, probably less. And they were, a multi-million-dollar a year, I think 8-figure a year business, if not more. With we had, I think, 400 employees inside of just Tracy Locke doors, and every client used every service. And so, to me, that's full service. Like, if every single client is using your full suite of services, you are full service. Whereas the lesson on that is I see a lot of people, they're trying to be full service, but they're really a la carte. And one client gets a combination of a different client gets a different combination. And that just creates a lot of operational complexity that eliminates process, which is one of the most valuable things that we can create and utilize inside of our business. And so I was a project manager. So I was responsible that's how I then started working directly with clients and then pitching and all that stuff. So I watched projects go from idea all the way through every single department. And they always went through the exact same way, exact same order. And so that was that. I went through a handful of other agencies.
Going back to that for a second, Greg. So
what
did you learn as a project manager that you brought to when you started your agency? Because, that's a key piece of making sure there's smooth operations. And by the way, if someone's listening to the audio, there is a video piece. And so you can see we're on the Alt Agency. And this is, you could actually, if you want to see Greg's approach here, you can actually opt in and get this. But this reminds me of a full service, like this first bullet that's X'd out is, are you still doing custom work for your agency clients? Meaning like you said, if you're not doing the same thing for everyone, but you're doing this for this person, this for that person, and calling it full service, then you're doing a lot of work, apparently.
100%. And it's usually the thing that, that mistake, right? Doing a la carte, each client is getting customized services. The classic saying of most agencies, they die from indigestion, not starvation, right? It's like, there's just too much complexity, especially when you're a small company and it's you and a couple contractors potentially. Like, to have 5 different services and each client's getting different things. Like that's so many balls up in the air for likely a person that is early days that doesn't have the ability to manage all of that. Like it's really difficult. And so watching like, and being a project manager, I mean, there were boundaries, there were timelines, there was like, hey, like we don't go outside of these areas to monitor, scope and things like that. And hey, like if we're going to hit this timeline, it needs to be in this side of the building by this date, or else that date is not realistic. Like that delivery date is not realistic. And so there was internal timelines and boundaries and scheduling. And the most important piece was all of that was very clearly communicated to the client. So like the client understood where things were at all times, updated when things are late, or like there was a protocol for all of that. And it just truly, like when you hear like the run like a well-oiled machine, like these large organizations, despite being very labor heavy, ran pretty smoothly. I mean, again, like there's definitely situations where they miss timelines and stuff like that and have crappy client interactions. But like for the most part, projects always flowed through the exact same order.
Yeah. And so we'll talk about other lessons you learn from there. But I love when I go to your site, I love reading these bullets here because it makes me aware of what could we be doing better. And sometimes I know you've thought through a lot of these things, and sometimes some people don't know how to articulate what their issues are, and you've done it on the page, right? So like we have, are you charging for time, and are you charging based on value, right? And so I love going through your page. So I encourage anyone, if you're an agency owner, go through altagency.com. Because for me, it's like, okay, what are the things that we are not doing? Because he's articulated these things on the page for me, right? So
for sure. And then I'd say like after a couple other agencies, the next big kind of aha was being client side when I was responsible for building out a small team within a digital department. And we had to leverage other agencies, and we worked with some big ones and we worked with some really small ones. And the lesson there was, and this one's kind of a key lesson that, again, I didn't realize how valuable that lesson was until we've been teaching what we teach. And so you'll see kind of the transition, but like every single agency that we brought in, there was a line item for them to train us on how they're doing what they were doing for us so that we didn't need them again. And so there was a timetable and they knew it. And we made it very clear, like, hey, we're going to pay you to show us over the next 6 to 12 months how to do this in-house where we don't need you again once it's set up. And they were like, just A, they were very on board with it. B, we were not the only ones that they do that with. And that was kind of an eye-opener too, which is now a key piece of what a lot of our clients do, is like training that leads to a whole new slew of ways to make money that is often way more profitable than doing the work in and of itself. So like I learned that when we were hiring these agencies. And then obviously I went out on my own. The first agency completely flopped. The next one was the one where we ended up working with you. And we were very specialized in who we served and what we kind of did. But even inside of that little ecosystem, we were still too general.
This was Systemly you're talking
This was Systemly, yeah. And for those listening, we basically were a sales and marketing, we're really just an automation boutique, like specifically for Infusionsoft, now Keep. And we worked mostly with coaches, course creators, like authors, speakers that were using Infusionsoft to automate their business. And we like, if Infusionsoft was in the sentence, we did it. But then that very quickly was not helpful because that was still too generalist, and we had to specialize even more, package, and then productize. And so like that was the agency that kind of led me into where we're at now with AltAgency.
So I know you've had conversations with Brad Martineau from 6th Division.
One of my early mentors. Yeah.
what do those conversations look like now? Because he's actually I had him on the podcast a little while ago. And what things do you talk about when you are chatting?
I mean, well, on my YouTube channel, we had one of our more recent, most popular videos was with him, and we talked for like an hour and 15 minutes, and both of us talk extremely fast, and everyone was like, in the comments, people were like, I had to slow down the speed, um, but it was a masterclass. I mean, just like how to think about systems, right? Like, how do you make something systematic? How do you think about um, packaging up a service into a specific outcome and a deliverable versus just like having it be this open-ended retainer, why retainers are horrible, um, war stories. I mean, I'll bring up things to him from time to time, even in text message that he basically taught me in 2017 that just now makes sense now.
Like
I'm like,
what's one of those things?
um, so he has this exercise that I've modeled and then adapted called the return. And it's how do you design a business that, like, I call it the forever business. Like if the business allows you to work this schedule on these types of activities and make this amount of money, that you would ride off into the sunset because you'd have like exactly what you wanted. And so starting with that, and what are those criteria that are important to you, and then build to meet those, became way more relevant. I mean, like when I first started working with him and I learned this document, I didn't have kids. They were not as old as they are now. I did not have a 7-figure business. I had not gone through a lot of, trials and tribulations of building a business while also being a good husband, a good father, and also taking care of myself and my team. Like, and so like now a lot of these exercises, I'm like, they have a whole new meaning. And I'm like, oh, like this tool that you taught me in 2017, like I'm still ROIing from that today, like, and that's like, we're going to talk about, intellectual property, right? Like, I mean, so many of the things that I've learned through coaching and consulting and other people's intellectual property, like they pay time and time again for years, that it's like, I've just seen the value of it. So yeah, I mean, our conversations are I'm always a student, honestly, when I'm talking to him.
And the return, is that you're talking about, it changes because you go through different stages of life too.
Yeah. And I'm
So,
always updating it. And it's like kind of a fairly living, breathing document. I mean, there's some things that are pretty straightforward on there. And so the lesson, like a lesson from that, and I think this is a lesson beyond just this exercise, that's a tool that can help. Having now worked with like 700 plus owners, and also being guilty of many of these things, like I'm not saying this as if I'm perfect. I think a lot of people are building other people's businesses, like meaning their definition of success, the way they're structuring it, what they're doing, how they're doing it is so modeled and influenced by someone else. And then they get it, they hit the goal, because modeling is great. But at some point you have to innovate. And I think a lot of people don't. And then they don't like what they've built. And then they go backwards or they shut it down. And I've just watched so many people build something that they're not happy with because they never stop to say, well, what's important to me? And this document really helps kind of calibrate that for people, and keep you on track. So yeah, I mean, I still use that tool today, and I've expanded it and turned it into my own beast.
so there's Brad, right?
Yep.
And I know you're big on learning. What were some other mentors and lessons you learned? I know Todd Herman is a mentor.
Yep. Yeah. Todd's great. I mean, most recently worked with him on, like making sure the business aligns with a lot of your values. So kind of building off of what we just talked about. But something that's really been unique with him is like understanding like my own DNA, my own like archetypes, and making sure that that's coming out inside of the messaging in my business, and how I can use that to my advantage to get more clients like the ones that I want to be getting versus the ones that I don't want to be getting. So that was kind of like a new level of like almost permission, sadly to say, but like clarity as well from him. Taki Moore, I have a lot of influence from him.
Really quickly, Greg, on Todd Herman. So,
Yeah,
so do you have an alter ego?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have an alter ego.
Okay.
We did not work on
You
creating
have
an alter ego.
AltAgency, but no alter ego. So I highly recommend people check out Todd's book. Alter Ego it is
a great
fantastic book. It talks about stuff he did, I think, with Kobe Bryant and other people as well. So
phenomenal. Yeah.
I thought you were telling me something like you were Batman or something, but
yeah, he does say in that book, not everyone needs an alter ego. But yeah, that wasn't what we worked on. I'm sure I will need one at some point. But that wasn't the premise of our engagement.
Yeah. I had to ask because I wasn't sure.
No, fair. So actually, by the way, his children's book is amazing. Super Me is a really good children's book for anyone that has kids out there. He co-wrote it. I unfortunately don't remember the co-author's name.
I'll pull it up by the time we're done.
It's basically the alter ego for kids, but like through characters. It's pretty cool. So yeah, shout out to Todd.
Super Me, My Super Me, Finding the Courage for Tough Stuff. Is that the one?
Yeah. Yep. My
Cool.
Super Me. Yeah.
I'll check it out. And it's Evie Jones looks like it's the co-author of that.
Yeah. I mean, I have my list of mentors and coaches is pretty long. Yeah.
So Taki Moore, you were saying, what'd you learn?
Yeah. Taki Moore. I mean, he taught me a lot about creating models, creating intellectual property. Dan Martell, who was a client of that first agency and also a mentor and coach. Yeah, the list goes on.
You know, it's usually the best, like when someone is a mentor coach, they have a lot of mentor and coaches they learn from. And I know one of the repeating themes that you talk about is expanding revenue through intellectual property.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah. So, I accidentally kind of fell on it, I think, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And I didn't know that it was intellectual property, because this was pre working with some of those people. But I was at Systemly and we were building, webinar funnels. Like as we refined down, we were like, oh, everybody wants webinar funnels. Like all of our engagements started with building out, an evergreen webinar funnel. Or a series of live webinar funnels, because another one of our clients was John Lee Dumas, and he made like the weekly live webinar a thing. And so we kind of really codified how to deliver that, what emails go out when, in what sequence, how do you segment, all the tagging. Like it was some of the most ninja automation that was built. And we were growing and we hit capacity. We were at capacity, and I was on a phone call with a prospect who like checked all the boxes, and he was like, how do I pay? I'm like, I can't take you right now. I'm like, I'm already working nights and weekends where that copy comes from. I will end up getting divorced by my wife if I like try to extend what I'm doing. Like if I try to work any more than I'm working right now, like I need to reverse this path. And he was in pain, and he was like, can you just like show me how to do it? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, like, can you just tell me what to do and I'll do it? And we were Infusionsoft certified partners. And at the time, as a partner, you were able to like import campaigns into other people's apps. And so I was like, yeah, actually, I think I can. And he's like, all right, well, how much? And so I was like, I just quoted 50% less than what I normally charge for it was like it was like 8K is what I charged him. And he was like, without hesitation, just paid. And I was like, hang up the phone. I'm like, I have no idea what just happened. I'm like, I just got 8K to show someone how to do what I do. I can give him all of the automation pre-built. Now I need to like record videos to show him how to update. Cause like once it gets imported, it's already working. He just needs to like publish it and make sure all of his content and pages are connected. And so I basically did a bunch of tactical videos like, hey, here's the steps, made a little checklist. Here's what you got to do, which we had because it was an internal SOP basically. And so I like cleaned up the internal SOP, added a couple extra videos and like handed him the Google Doc. And he was like, this was amazing. And I was like, that was infinitely easier to do than the other work that we've been doing over here. Like, how do I do this again? And so that was kind of the, oh, wait, we know exactly how to do this thing. And we have a very special way in which we do it that works for everybody. How do I make it transferable to them so that it's less work for us? And that was like V1 of me kind of having this like hybrid delivery model of like, I'm going to show it to you, give it to you, and then we'll quality control it. And I'll answer any questions over this window of time. Let us know if you need any help. And in 11 months, that revenue stream surpassed our agency revenue, like our actually done for you service revenue, and became its own 7-figure income stream. And I was like, there's something to this.
What did the ongoing look like within that? Was there an ongoing piece that's included? And then after that, some people may need support. So what did the ongoing tail look like? Because I could see, like you're saying, like, listen, we sold it. It's super profitable because we don't have to go in and do the work. Like you're now handling it.
Yeah.
But what did you decide? Okay, we're going to include this in there. And then after that, you may get a call in 6 months and go, hey, we're not sure. Can you help? And then how did you price that?
Yeah. So at that time, we had a couple clients on a recurring package that you guys were on, that morphed over time. But the short answer is, for a while, we didn't have anything that was ongoing. And hey, agency owners of the world, that's okay. Not everything needs to be recurring revenue, despite what everyone tells you. You should actually get paid up front for some things, and there should be a finite end to projects. If you are a website designer, I'm calling you out. If you deliver one-off projects and turn it into a subscription so that you can trick yourself into thinking you have recurring revenue, that is not recurring revenue. That is a dumb move. Very dumb move. So there are some things that need to be one-off. Like that, we installed a webinar system. Once that thing was live, very minimal maintenance was really needed. And I was able to give them some videos where they could maintain it themselves. Because here's the thing, all of the crappy work, I say this nicely, like all the work that like we didn't want to do came from the maintenance. So yes, we could charge a recurring fee to maintain it, but like I always use the analogy, and every agency, please feel free to steal this and use this because a client gave it to me. The engine builder versus the pit crew. We built beautiful engines that made people a lot more money and saved them a ton of time. But come race, like, so race car, like building the engine of the car, but like, who's not jumping over the wall and changing the tires on the day of the race? The guy that built the engine. He's up in the suite having champagne, right? He's chilling. Like, so like, you don't need to be both. And all of the work that we personally dreaded that had us working nights and weekends was all of the stuff that we agreed to just to have recurring revenue. And so like version 1 of it was we didn't because we wanted to get away from it. Version 2 of it was how we structured it was like done with you consulting. And so we called it automation advisor intentionally. And we basically met every month and we said, hey, what's on your radar? Where else can we streamline your business? We're going to build it together and you can watch over our shoulder. And we'll do some things, outside of that. But like it was clients that had someone in-house that was like starting to take the lead, like the training. They had someone in-house that was going to become responsible for the day-to-day management of the tool. And we just built cool stuff with them and showed them and answered the questions for that person. So we became a resource for their internal person. And that worked great. I mean, we had, dozens and dozens of clients on like a 2K retainer for that.
Talk about, Greg, the evolution of pricing, right? Because you started off actually not with us, I don't believe, but you charged $200, I think, to start, and you basically said, "I'll do anything." Okay, so just walk me through the evolution of there to then. I mean, if you would have told your $200 a month self, "I'm going to charge $8K for just hitting a button." I mean, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it. It, but you would have told yourself you're crazy, probably. I don't know. So what did the price?
I probably wouldn't have believed it was possible. So when I first started the business, I was enamored by this concept of productized services. And at the time, there weren't a lot of them. And the first real famous one was called WP Curve, which was $99 a month, unlimited WordPress support, one request at a time. And that was like the first real big time productized service, was under the umbrella of an unlimited service subscription. But it wasn't really unlimited because there was a lot of constraints. But like a lot of people now automatically think that's the only way to productize, and it's not. And it's like unlimited service. These are all the things that are included for this monthly fee. And so I was like, oh, well, like no one's doing that for Infusionsoft. That's going to be my plan. But like 99 is a little bit too cheap. Infusionsoft's kind of complex. I'm going to go 200. And so
like, I'm going big time.
Big time, doubling it. And so, but mind you, for all of you listening, this was like, I just got certified in Infusionsoft. Like I was in love with the tool. I was better than the people that were my clients, but I was by no means a master.
But I get that mindset. You know what I mean? I get that mindset of like, it's unlimited, but it's unlimited like one thing at a time. So it's not like ultimately give us like 17 things. Like,
right.
We're doing one at a time. So they're limited. If you're doing one every 3, 4, 5 days or whatever, they're really getting whatever per month. So I get it.
Yeah. And so for me, it was how I structured all. So again, this was early days. I didn't know what people really valued, what they cared about, what they were going to need. I didn't know what I wanted to necessarily build out of it. I just knew I needed more reps. And so every engagement, I was like, hey, like, will you commit to 90 days? And like, we agreed to revisit at the end of 90 days and like, see how it's working for both of us. And that was intentional because like, I wanted an out if I didn't like it. And so we had a handful of clients come in at 200. Yeah. We got 7 clients in 6 days. And I was like, whoa, one call closes either because of the price and or the pain. And it was a combination. But like, it was taking me like months to sell my other service when I was my first agency. And so I'm like, all right, there's something to this. The next couple I bumped up to 300, 500, and then I went to 1,000. And it was actually Dan Martell that like, I had been following him and he put out a request for help. And I was like, yeah, I can do that in like 5 seconds. And he's like, well, then do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I just did it for him for free to show him. And he's like, if you can figure this thing out that none of these 5 other people that I paid a lot of money to can figure out, he's like, you'll be hired. And I was like, done. And I fucking researched forever. And then I figured it out very quick, to him quickly, but I researched a lot and we solved the problem. And he's like, all right, cool. Like, how do I hire you? And I threw out my plans, which at the time the highest was like $1,000 a month. And he was like, dude, I need to pay you more for what I'm going to need. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he was the first one that became like our higher price point. And then I hired him as a coach, and he was also the one that was like, I'm saying this as a coach, not a client. He's like, your model sucks. It's not scalable. Take good care of me on the way out, sort of thing. And I was like, that was really, like, I will never forget that. And that was kind of the evolution. But yeah, started at $200 a month because I didn't know what the client valued, and I didn't know what I would like doing. But I can tell you, you get 7 clients and you work with them for 90 days doing just about any and everything. At the end of those 90 days, I'm like, I had a laundry list of things that I never wanted to do again. And I had a laundry list of things that I knew that were moving the needle for them that were far more valuable than $200 a month. And so it got me going, and it got me inside to see and know what to package. Now, I wish I could say that I was smart enough to have known that that's what I was doing the entire time, but it was mostly figuring it out along the way.
Greg, for the intellectual property part, so you discover this kind of because you're at capacity, and the person's like, I still need you. And you're like, well, here's what I can do. Right. When we think about that for a second, you're like, okay, $8,000. When you go, were there clients you started rejecting because they didn't want you just to set it up and walk away, and they wanted you actually to continue to do stuff? Like when you were having these conversations, because from then you start selling more of like, here's everything and do it yourself.
Yeah. So, and there's definitely a lot of like little bouncing back and forth from a timeline perspective, but yeah, I mean, there was a lot of clients that we turned down because we didn't want to do more things that they wanted us to do. And we walked away, and we didn't take them because I had already learned that the hard way. So I was like, I know that taking this on is not the right move. It'll hold us back. I would love to work with that person, but I can't promise to do that. And so, yeah, we walked away from a decent amount of deals too that would have been great short-term money, but would have broke us because it would have had us deviate back to going to the process. It would have had us deviate from our process. And the process is what allowed us to stay lean and really efficient and serve the amount of clients that we were able to serve with the size of team that we had in the time that we were doing it. And so to take like 1 or 2 of the wrong client, even though the money was good, it would throw a wrench into all of the stuff that we had put in place. Now, guess how I figured that out? Because I did make the mistake and take a couple of the wrong ones at some point. But then, you grow up and you figure out that that's, what do they say? Like sometimes if it's easy now, it's usually harder later, so like choose hard, do the hard stuff first, because then it'll be easy later. It's kind of like that was what I experienced.
I mean, you have to be disciplined somewhat because you're going to get pulled into people wanting you to do more. Right.
Yeah.
So I love probably the agencies. I want you to talk a little bit about the sweet spot of agencies you work with, because some agencies may already be, I'm not going to say too far gone, but like it's harder.
It's true. It's
okay,
true.
we'll say that too far gone because they're used to doing it a certain way, and you coming in saying this is like too much of a shift, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I know, like for me, when you talk about this, and I want to hear some of the people you've worked with and how they've implemented this intellectual property, but like Zen Pilot sticks out, right? It seems like they're, again, like bigger, but like have kind of this type of model. And we'll talk about some examples, but from what you've helped people do with intellectual property, but what's the kind of the sweet spot for you that you find is like actually good? They're at this point and they're trainable, they're not too far gone, et cetera.
Yeah, it's, I'm going to be careful because like this gets clearer and clearer every single day. And like, there's just so many nuances, which makes my life actually a lot more difficult from a lead generation perspective. But like, it's not always revenue based. Um, it's, if I had to kind of pinpoint revenue, I would say like the trend that I like, if I could catch someone between, you know, as low as 30K a month to like 50 to 60K a month, usually their team is lean enough um, to be nimble enough to make some of the kind of transition and pivot, if you will, because you do temporarily have to juggle most of them, your current clientele that we'll just call it legacy clients, with this new way of doing stuff. And like, not everyone has the same level of risk tolerance. And so like the $2 million a year agency that's has zero or negative profits that wants to do this because they want to, but they're unwilling to fire half their company because they're bloated as it is to make this happen, they won't make that move. And it's, they dilly dally for so long that it gets worse. And we can't affect change because they won't make some hard decisions. And it's, it's tough to argue with it. Like, I know I have difficulty at that stage too. Like, you want to be taking care of people, but like sometimes, again, we talked about it earlier, most of them die from indigestion. And so like, they have all of this operational complexity and drag that is there at this stage to just pay the bills, barely. And now you're saying you need to go do this new thing. Well, they don't even have bandwidth or capacity to do any of that stuff. They can't, they're overutilized, every single person, and they don't have the personnel to do it, and they don't have money to go hire new personnel to do it. The answer is you actually have to take a step back in revenue and probably people to free up that capacity. And we've had, unfortunately, taken clients that were in this stage, and like, you know, we didn't really get testimonials because we weren't able to do anything because they couldn't make some of those difficult moves. And that's why we don't really, you know, we have that candid conversation now. I'm like, hey, like, we can help if you're willing to potentially make some of these moves, which are going to be very painful and unfortunately are going to hit your ego really hard. And, you know, I can tell Mr. or Mrs. Prospect that you have a big ego. That's fine. And this is going to hurt. Like, can you deal with that? And most of them that are like over 1 million, 2 million are just like, they won't do it. So yeah, like the earlier, the better, the less team, the less whale clients, the better, in my opinion.
I want to talk through some of those hard decisions, because sometimes, you know, you've been through this before. You could say, listen, here's the hard decisions you need to make. If you listen to us, you know, it will happen. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know if we want to talk about Chris Bayless, and his journey a little bit, but, you know, maybe the hard decisions he had to make and what happened and how he, you know, turned his intellectual property into.
Yeah. Chris's story is really interesting, I think, because it kind of hits both sides of the coin. Because so Chris was a consultant. So like, I mean, he was already, quote unquote, a step further than most kind of service-based people. I mean, he rolled up his sleeves and did a lot of work, but he worked with nonprofit organizations on sponsorship, like how to go get sponsors for, you know, your events and festivals and things like that. And, you know, he was flying around the country 40 some odd times a year to say the same thing in a different room, which, you know, he was exhausted. His wife did not like him flying all over the country 40 some odd times a year. And so he was like, I'm making a ton of money, but I'm working all the time and traveling all the time that I'm miserable. Well, let me go try to figure out how to hire. And so he would go hire, and he's like, sweet, I got all this stuff off my plate, but then the clients really just wanted him. And so, and then the team was really expensive because he had such a unique experience that like he had to pay, like in order to offload to not have to travel, he needed really expensive people. And so he was hiring people that had a certain level of experience as he did. And there was challenge in managing those sorts of people because they easily could have been doing this on their own. Also, some of them were. And so it's like, okay, I can make a ton of money by myself, but be miserable, or I can delegate and make way less money, but a lot of this stuff is still coming back to me and the clients are still complaining because they want me. It's a lose-lose. And so like he did that 2 or 3 times before finally like coming to us. And when we unpacked what he did back to process, I'm like, all right, well, like take me through, like, do you have a method or approach to hit that goal? Because he was just like, we're going to help you get sponsorship. And it's like, okay, well, how much sponsorship? How fast? Like to who? Like what type of companies? Like, is there a certain value size? So like we got really crystal clear on like the who, and like then it became, well, I can get them their next sponsor in X time. So it became a very specific offer, and we launched it as a done with you cohort. So I'm like, they all want you, they're going to get you, but they're going to get you with a small group. And so he, within like 31 days of working together, we showed him very high level, like, hey, here's how you're going to move them through this 9-step process that we helped him unpack. And then you're going to teach them live over the course of X weeks and answer questions along the way. You're going to give them these resources. And he made like 30 to 60 grand in the first like 2 months. And then he went into our next level program, our mastermind, and he scaled that one revenue stream to over $1 million in about 16 months. And once he generated the first like 40 grand, he's like, I'm never flying anywhere ever again to do this because it was so much easier. It was way more affordable. And he used to charge like 25K to go to all these places. When he launched, the first thing was only 2K. Now they charge, I think, around like 8 to 10K. So it kind of ended up netting out just shy of 50% of what it was when it was like one-on-one done for you. But he's not involved, 2 years later, he's not involved in sales calls. Heck, he just went on a 3-week long vacation and his team doesn't even need him. Like he is not needed for anything at all. Again, I can't take credit for all of that or really much of it. Most of it's him. Like we just kind of showed him that it's possible and like gave him a structure to do it. And what is it? It's a combination of videos, instructional videos. Like how do you facilitate change with the worksheets, the assets, the tools that he was literally just using himself already and showing them how to use them so that they could get the result, and offering up leverage consulting in a group format and specific touch points throughout his process where they would unlock, bottlenecks and things like that. And like, so, he hasn't done one-on-one in 3 years and he's, I think approaching 3 million a year in revenue. And he's got like a pretty lean team.
I was going to ask about the pricing, and I love kind of how you broke down that piece. What's the length of the program that they decided on to deliver it over?
I think his is 90 days now.
90 days.
Yeah. So it's like a certain amount of sponsors or sponsorship dollars within that window of time. And yeah, there was no recurring revenue on that for almost 2 years, and he still did it. And then he added like a mastermind for like systematizing it. He's rolling out a done for you. He's now at a level where he's going to bring back a service where they do it all for you at a really high, at a percentage of sponsorship raised. And so like, I mean, like he kind of is bringing back in different components to bolt on to make this thing, a term that I've been using a lot that is what he's perfectly example of doing is like delivery agnostic. So I've been saying like kind of the premise of alternative agency is in today's world, the lines between what we know as a traditional agency, we'll just say like labor, we're going to do it all for you. We got you. Don't worry. To consulting, to course creator, to facilitator, to mentor, to coach. The lines of those things have become so blurred. SaaS, SWAS, software with a service, right? Like, if you don't look at those as opportunities for you to be better as a provider to your client, I think you're missing a huge opportunity. And so, like, how do you use those to your advantage and not just be like, oh, like, I'm not a coach? Like, well, you actually have to coach your team to take it off your plate. Why can't you coach their team? You actually coach them on strategy right now. If I had to guess, right? You already consult them. You already give them strategy in your retainer for free. It's not even a line item. It should be, but it's not. You could charge for that. Like, there's all these little things that like actually are, you're already kind of doing it in most cases. It's just you're giving it away. And so like he's able to now install this repeatable system and show them how to do it. Then now he can bring back the done for you piece. So yeah. And just to call out an example that everybody will know, Alex Hormozy, at least most people that will listen to this probably know. I interviewed him on my YouTube channel. Gym Launch is a perfect example of this. And in his book, $100 million offers, he uses the word productized. He went around the country helping gyms launch. I'm going to help you fill your gym in 30 days. And he did everything. He wrote the ads, he filmed the ads, he did the sales call, like he did the whole process. And he got tired. And so he's like, let me just show you how to do it. I'm done flying around. And so he guided them through the things that he did and had them do it. And it still worked. And so then he's like, okay, well, like, how do I do this with multiple people at once? Well, let me record these videos because everyone needs to do the same thing. So like everybody watch this video, everybody fill out this worksheet. Oh, you need help? Hop on my office hours call. Oh, you want us to build out this one piece for you? We'll do that one piece for you and then hand it off to you. Gym Launch was a 16-week build out an acquisition funnel into a 4-year mastermind, which was, we'll help you now run an actual gym because you need to hire people. You have operations. We're going to coach and train you and give you our systems around operations because you can't just keep selling people because you'll blow up. And it's a hybrid, right? There's like group calls. There's some done for you. There's pre-watched videos. There's templates and scripts. Like, is it a service? Is it an agency? Is it a coaching program? Is it a course? It's all of them. And like merge together to move someone from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible for both parties. And that's also a productized service. It just uses all of those ingredients to get the result. And almost every single agency can do the same thing in some way, shape, or form. We've worked with a variety of digital and creative agencies that are able to pull this off in some way, shape, or form. I know it was a huge rant, but
no, I love it. Greg, I know we're a little bit over time. I don't know if you have a few more minutes or not, but I have two last questions. I have many more last questions, but I'll keep it to two in this case. But the two last questions, one, I want to hear about some of your favorite, people always probably ask you all the time, what kind of tools and software you use. And I'm going to pull up the page, but I want to hear some of your favorites. And then at the end, I want to hear just like, how do people work with you? But start off with tools for a second. I'm also going to just pull up your website here.
Before we started recording, we joked around that like we're in the process of redoing our website because it does not even do the best job of articulating what we do anymore. But these are some tools that we use. Whatever tool you use is the best tool to use is really the answer. Like the tool isn't going to save you. But I mean,
don't
most
tell me
people
that,
need.
Greg. Come on.
What's that?
I'm saying, don't tell me that. The tool.
Yeah.
What are your favorites? And we're at altagency.com/tools, and I'll scroll through this so you can see it. But what are your favorites?
My newest favorite, or our main favorite tool right now is Notion. I mean, we run our entire business on Notion. There it is, Notion. I think easily any person can run their entire business or operationally, procedurally with Notion up to 3 to 5 million. And there's other people that are saying that too. That's not just my view, but it's really powerful. It takes a little while to get set up because it's kind of a blank canvas, but there's a lot of cool templates out there. We give our clients all of our pre-built templates inside of our programs as well. That's one of my favorites, like project management, task management, SOPs, all that stuff lives inside of Notion. The next one is we're newer to, but like some sort of automation tool. We were certified in all this stuff. Like we used ActiveCampaign and Infusionsoft. We're in the process of migrating right now to go high level. It's not, I don't think it's as great as everybody says, but it is all in one and it does the job and makes a lot of things pretty simple, and it is getting better and better. So we're using that right now. And I think for an agency that's trying to like keep it simple, calendaring, pipeline, email broadcasts, membership content, all that stuff is really powerful inside of there. Those, I mean, I could do most of our business with just those two.
Love it. Yeah, there's a lot more on here. You can check them out. Yeah. Talk about how do people work with you?
Yeah, so we have 2 different programs. Navigator is our kind of like flagship program. It's a 4-month experience to start, and it's really for the service provider who has kind of validated who they serve and what they sell. It might not be packaged and positioned appropriately, but like, you're good at Facebook ads for this market or brand identity for that type of person. All of your clients might not represent your ideal client, but you know who they are. And you really want to kind of productize that, refine it, package it into that one promise that you can deliver over and over and over again. Navigator will help you refine that packaging. And it's actually not on our website right now. This is all coming. And basically what it does is going to help you deploy your delivery system, sales system, and marketing system for that one core offer, so that you kind of have an end-to-end client journey that is systematic and predictable. Once that's stabilized and you're like cash flowing consistently, you're not having up and down income months from either a lead flow or a cash flow perspective, our mastermind, the Trailblazer Collective, is for you. And that's like if you want to scale add a new revenue stream through intellectual property. You want to bolt on training, you want to bolt on consulting or coaching, so that you can grow through monetizing your expertise, not just hiring more people. So it's kind of there for the journey.
Love it. Greg, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out AltAgency.com. More episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Greg, thanks so much.
Jeremy, thanks so much.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.